often find myself saying this, particularly in the context of mental health, that while it is crucial and critical to be aware of various studies that take place, papers that are written, the views and observations of clinicians and experts, because it is such a human realm, something that has directly things to do with one's feelings and sentiments and emotions, uh, to acquaint oneself with lived experiences of various people is, I think, brings about an altogether different and much deeper insight. And which is why we are extremely delighted and privileged to have the two ladies who have put together a most critical and beautiful book. It's called Bandaged Moments. And it brings together very, very moving, poignant stories of different people from across the country who have experienced mental distress, who have been in circumstances and situations that have tested their resilience. Um, we are calling this session of talk therapy Underneath the Bandage, hoping to know from the two doctors a little bit about their process, about what motivated them to embark on this in the first place. It couldn't have been easy, far from it. So I'm very, very grateful that we're being joined by Dr. Sengupta and Dr. Nishi. I would like to welcome both of them and thank them for making time. Very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, as is customary, and you may have noticed conspicuous by its absence was any formal introduction, I tend to make a royal mess introducing the work of my guests, and therefore I think it's much wiser and safer to leave it to them to do themselves. So before we sort of dive into the book, if I can ask you ladies to tell our viewers a little bit about yourselves and your work in your own words, please. Dr. Sengupta?
Okay. Yeah, so I teach English in Shoshima College, which is an undergraduate college in the southern fringes of southwestern part of the city, and it's under the University of Calcutta. Apart from that, my other prime research and interest area is translation, both translation studies as well as doing practical translations, and gender studies, digital humanities. All these are some of the areas which interest me. I also do a bit of creative writing in terms of poetry and short stories. And I'm a part of this intercultural poetry and performance library, which is an organization which now has a pan-Indian and even beyond Indian presence in terms of members, of which Nishi can speak more about because she's the secretary of that organization. So, yeah, so we all come together for poetry and to talk about poetry, to read poetry and think together. So
absolutely wonderful. You're very, very modest. So let me just share my two bits in my limited understanding. Translation work is some of the trickiest and toughest to do, isn't it? Because there's that eternal sort of debate around whether you are able to preserve the essence of what was intended to be conveyed. Which and hence the phrase "lost in translation." So I have huge respect and admiration for anybody who's involved in and with that kind of work. But thank you for that, Dr. Nishi.
thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I am also an academic and I teach in a college in Calcutta, which is called Brahmananda Keshav Chandra College. People call it BKC College. In short, I've been teaching here. I am going to complete 27 years next month,
Wow.
teaching English literature to undergraduate students. And I also we have similar areas. Both of us are English teachers, and I also am a creative writer. I write poetry, short stories. I write on travel, and I have also written on food. That's the book that's going to be out soon. And translation is something that I have been doing very recently, actually. Apart from that, I am also very closely associated with the cause of dementia, and I'm part of an organization called the Alzheimer's and Related Disorders Society of India, Calcutta chapter. So I'm very much a part of that organization, primarily from my own experiences as a caregiver to my mother who had Alzheimer's. So when I speak or write on the topic, it's from that point of view. So
Thank you
that's
for that. And of course, you had very, very generously shared a little bit of that with me earlier on. And I completely appreciate sort of the lens from which you view this. Also, I must confess that this is very personally exciting for me because I have too been a student of literature, a bit of a wannabe writer. In fact, my latest review of Atish Sahir's book just came out in the 50th edition of the book review. So it's very exciting to be amongst such sort of established literature professors. So wonderful. Now, I know that the book has been out for a minute, and you've sort of done the rounds with some very, very established media networks and publications in terms of talking about it and promoting it. But I must ask you, with the safe assumption that there is some part of a new audience that we bring, tell us a little bit about the origin story in the first place. How did this even come about? How did the idea come about? Um, it's quite some project to put together.
Yeah, so as Nabanita said, we are part of an organization called Intercultural Poetry and Performance Library, and that is where we worked for the first time during the pandemic on a volume of poems which we edited. And then, uh, in a very casual conversation, we decided that since we were able to work all right for that volume, we thought we could do something together, collaborate on a project. And this was a very casual telephone conversation where we spoke about translation because Nabonita's area of interest is in translation, and both of us have written short stories. So we are interested in the genre of the short stories, and of course, we are women writers ourselves. And so we thought of bringing all of these, these ideas of ours together. And then we decided to zero on choose mental health as the subject primarily because, as I said, because of my interest in and close association with dementia. I mean, that is not a mental health issue at all. That is a neurological one. But then there are several people who have dementia also have depression. There are
Right.
several behavioral problems which come in. So I've seen all of that at close quarters, and of course we don't talk much about it. And even with dementia we don't talk about it because when I began to write and share my experiences, then I had several people approaching me and telling me that something they've also faced. So that's when I realized that there's so much of a hush hush about all of this. So we thought we would bring all of these interests of ours as individuals, as academics, and as authors together. And that is how we began. This was sometime in 2021.
Hmm.
And then we sat down and worked up a proposal and began to share it with anyone and everyone who we thought would be interested and could bring some story to board.
Yeah.
And now, Vanita, would you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess you've covered most of it. So, I mean, maybe I'll talk of it next.
So I appreciate how on paper and theoretically it was a convergence of various facets that interested the two of you. Having said that, and I know I'm sounding like a stuck record, but it was still very very audacious and cliche as it sounds. I think it'll be of interest for people to know two things. One is what was the process in terms of choosing stroke curating the stories, and number two, what I don't think people will have an appreciation for unless we underscore it is the various languages.
So, yeah, we actually had one thumb rule that the stories have to deal with mental health. We'd mentioned that in our call for stories also, that it has to do with mental health, and that it includes both clinical and non-clinical perspectives of the mental health. Now, when we began working, and both of us will fully appreciate your use of the word audacious. It was indeed audacious, because there was one point when both of us were almost like, I mean, probably this will never take off. Probably this book will never see the light, because we were not getting enough stories. Like, when we first opened this call for stories, we got two
Hmm.
or three, and they were very fast. So that was like, we were very hopeful that okay, fine. But then after that, stories were trickling. But at one point of time, we had reached a kind of, we thought that nothing is going to take from here, nothing good is positive is going to happen from here. But then yes, we did not abandon the project, thankfully. We kept at it, and stories started coming in. So one of the things that we constantly kept on uh, telling whoever would approach us, that the stories must deal with mental health, because we had received stories initially which were not exactly on mental health, but they were kind of on domestic abuses
I
or
thought so.
sexual abuse of women, which, I mean, of course, they are traumatic. The trauma leads to health issues, but they were not stories primarily on mental health issues. Like, one will understand if they read the stories here. We do have several stories which talk about the sexual violation of women or the trauma associated with it, but then those come under the mental health issue. So we had to kind of have several conversations also at times with the translator, saying that okay, this story is not suitable, please see if you can find stories of the I mean, of some other kind that suits our purpose. And we had also listed it out in the call for paper, saying that it can be anything like clinical, like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, or non-clinical, like sometimes depression is not diagnosed, or suicidal tendencies, or just OCDs. We also have stories on
Of
OCDs.
course.
So that was what we actually stuck to when we were looking for stories, that they have to deal with mental health. It can be either clinical or non-clinical, that's not the point, but they must be talking about some mental health issue.
If I may quickly, with your permission, come in here with a quick follow-up question. I'm also curious, during this process of collection and gathering and curation, did you notice any tendency or weightage in terms of stories coming in from caregivers or from people themselves who had been in distress? Was there also a sort of divide between you were getting more stories from a particular gender?
Oh,
All the stories, the original stories, all the authors are all the stories are written by women authors, but translators we've had both men and women. And though we don't know the genesis of most of the stories where they began, but there are a couple of stories about which the authors, the translators, did speak to us For instance, the Tamil story Glass Walls, written by Lakshmi Kannan, translated by Lakshmi Kannan herself, which is the longest story in the volume, was based on something that the author had seen in somebody in a family that was known to her, and she was very strongly affected by that particular event, and she has been a very strong advocate and a strong supporter of her book right from the point of time that she heard of this project. The others we are not aware of, because as Nabanita said, we reached out and people further reached out. So most of the writers, most of the translators, we don't even know, and we're so glad that they reached out to various people across India, because most of them we don't know. There are a few that we knew virtually, maybe met one or two, but most of them we don't know, and we didn't want to know about how the story came upon and things like that. There was only one thing that we had mentioned, and that was that the original story should have been published at some point of time. That was the only thing that we
That was
had
like a
in mind.
mandate, right?
Yeah, so that was the only thing that we had in mind. Apart from that, we had no other clue, but we do know that some of the authors, some of the translators have a very great interest in mental health, have been very positive and have been very forthcoming and talking about, not only in terms of the translation, but later when the book was out, we've had a great deal of support from some of them. So that's very heartening to find that you have people who want to talk about it and who want to spread the word around.
Absolutely. But I think it
So just
also
one,
is. Sorry, please go ahead.
yeah, I just want to make a small point that since we were looking at fictions only, these are collection of fiction. So we were not keen. I mean, not keen in the sense we deliberately did not want to know of the genesis. Because when someone is writing stories, there are multiple trigger points, personal at times gathered.
Sure.
It's the way the creative process happens. So that's one of the thing also that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very, very significant point, and so it's actually quite beautiful, isn't it? Because it's almost like somebody spoke to somebody, and that somebody spoke to somebody, and then you had 6 degrees of separation at play. Um, did you have any other sort of certain sort of criteria that you had discussed between the two of yourselves, in the sense of, oh, okay, now we have too many on depression, or we have too few on, anything of that sort?
No, no, that's we did not
No.
actually need to,
We
because
were
the
we were
story is.
looking, yeah. We were primarily looking at representation from as many languages as possible.
That's also absolutely wonderful. Now, obviously, in the process of a project such as this, there's bound to be a certain impact that this has on you personally. Talk a little bit about some of that, maybe some bad, some good.
Um, well, one of the feedbacks that we have got from our readers is that it's difficult to read the book at a go because of the kind nature of the stories. And as you mentioned, that's somewhere bound to impact us. But I guess because we were working together, and conversation, I think, in itself is a great therapy. So I don't think we ever felt bogged down or
Hmm.
kind of mentally at any kind of
Hmm.
unease by the stories, because all the entire process of editing, um, first the selection, then the editing, then another round of editing, we'd been doing that together. We
Hmm.
would sit online, mornings, nights, whenever we would get time, and on Google Meet, or I mean some video mode, and we will be sharing screen and reading them together. So probably because we were constantly in conversation, it kind of the any overwhelming impact that it might have had on us got dissipated.
Again,
That's one.
I think that's a very vital point, because you were really sort of um, it was almost like being in talk therapy while putting it together.
But yeah, one thing I must mention, like there were a few stories, particularly the Gujarati one. We couldn't edit it at one go. We had to give ourselves a break. We said, like,
Hmm.
let's take a break. So
Hmm.
that's there, but not lasting.
Yeah, and also because we were looking at several things in the stories, we were looking at whether the translation has been
Sure.
done properly or not, whether the stories, the idea of readability of the story, that it needs to flow, even the English translation needs to
Right.
flow well, so that somebody, because it is fiction, somebody would read the story and enjoy it. So our focus was there. But I completely agree with Nabonita when she says that, this was something that we decided on day one, that, and the reason why we decided, of course, was because otherwise we were not getting things done. So just to kind of, work things together, let things moving, so we decided that let's sit and do it together. So at least if we are doing for an hour, I know that within that hour there is work going to happen, rather than sit individually in our spaces and do. But as Nabonita very rightly said, this actually had worked out well for us. But of course, there have been a couple of stories which have been difficult, and we needed to take a break, a pause somewhere, and then go back to it.
But taking from your point of getting things done, I don't know if at all the two of you had set yourselves any kind of timelines or deadlines, but certainly to me as an outsider, and given what all this entailed, you've done it very quickly.
Oh, okay. We thought like we were going on forever. Because 21 to 25. Like,
Well, I mean, just because presume that obviously includes calling for the stories and that entire process.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, that took more time.
there is whenever we talk about mental health, and there are any number of individuals who are in some kind of distress, or they've been diagnosed with some kind of condition, there's inevitably this feeling of doom, gloom, and hopelessness. And I always remember this. There's this wonderful organization of mental health professionals out of Delhi, and their organization is called Seek Anitya, and Anitya being the Sanskrit word that means transition or transitional. I think that it's important in this kind of endeavor to also communicate the fact that in a lot of cases, if not all, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, things, there is. It does pass, and it can pass, and you can sort of get over it. Is that something that you were either conscious of or realized, that that's a sort of that's an important takeaway?
I don't think we were conscious of right at the beginning, but then as we started getting the stories and we started reading the stories, we've noticed that some of them do have a very positive angle to that. In some, you have a proper diagnosis happening. In some, you have the family coming out as a good support, the right kind of a support. There are a couple of stories where you have characters, going to see a psychiatrist or a counselor. There is even one story which takes place in a rural setup where, this lady, she pronounces depression, in a different way, depression, and so on. But then the fact that, even this person who is not so well educated, does not live in an urban setup, knows that uh, there is something happening and one needs to see a doctor. There is also one story which does have a kind of a dark humor as well. So yes, and I think that's something that one needs to always understand and realize when you're talking about mental health, and that it's not the end of a road somewhere. There's always, it's a part of life. It's a very normal kind of normal, if you can use the word normal, part of life. Just as there are other
Physical
disorders,
ailments. Hmm.
physical ailments, and people don't stop talking about physical ailments, about how their pressure or the thyroid and things have overshot, but we don't talk about this. It's very important to, I think, normalize talking about all of this, because this is so much a part of what life is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think you kind of partially answered my final question, which was going to be that, again, having gone through this entire book, has it left you with a sense of some things that may be required in the environment in our country as far as mental health and accessing mental health goes?
Yeah, definitely. Like, one of the purpose of our book was also to begin this conversation around mental health. Because initially, when we were trying to bring in all our interest areas, we've also wanted to do something that would be meaningful. I mean, that would be kind uh, of some would make some
Larger
meaning,
interests,
would some,
larger
yeah,
relevance.
relevance. Also, you just mentioned the concept of anitya and or seeing light at the end of the tunnel. So, the entire process of creating this book was also to begin with a conversation. And we both of us have always felt that a beginning of a conversation is also a journey towards the end of the tunnel. I mean, where you reach, whether you reach midway, whether you find the light finally, whatever might happen, it is definitely a process, a journey that begins. So this was always there in our mind that when we are doing this book, we are trying to create conversations, trying to create awareness around topics which are otherwise considered taboo, which are otherwise considered to be something to be ashamed of, the stigma. So it's the more conversation we have, the more we can come out of the stigma that one associates with it. That
Absolutely.
was very much there.
I can't help but show off. We had the wonderfully charming Jerry Pinto on this very show, and he's of course written on about this book as well. Somebody who writes characters so beautifully, people who are in distress. And I remember in that interview, he used a phrase that I have shamelessly borrowed, stolen, which is a conspiracy of silence around, mental health and people who are afflicted and suffering. How did that, just out of curiosity on a lighter note, how did that come about? Did you guys sort of reach out to him, or did the publishers reach out to him?
The publisher reached out. We had no role in Jerry Pinto writing the blurb for the book. Ruth Vanita, we did get in touch with, but this was something that the publisher did. And we're so delighted that
Yeah.
we have him writing the blurb, because he has written about mental health.
Yeah.
So it's very, very good to have him write that for our book.
Do you?
Actually, we must also give a shout out to our publisher for
Hmm,
taking up this call. I mean, they have
absolutely.
not just done this book, they are also trying to create dialogue around mental health by organizing listening circles. That's something that Neogi Books is trying to do. And I think that's very important because, I mean, that creates dialogue around mental health.
Most certainly, and it has to be applauded, because I don't think too many others would. Um, do you have the stomach for another volume?
Uh, we have another volume. We have begun working on another volume, but this time it's not on mental health. This has a different. We still are working translation, women writing, short stories, but this time the subject is alcohol.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe after a few years, maybe we could come back to mental
Yeah.
health, because I think there are still more stories and we have not been able to cover all languages. So
Sure,
maybe at
sure.
some
No,
point of
and
time.
in any case, I think implicit in at least some of those stories relating to alcohol, and one sort of has some idea of how alcoholism works, and it's sort of where it sort of takes birth and is seeded, will of course, be mental health related automatically. So, um, wonderful, ladies. Thank you so very much. If there's anything that you wish to tell people about this book that we've not discussed, maybe I've not asked you, please do share.
Yeah, one thing I think that we must kind of mention is that though the book is written, I mean, the stories are originally written by women authors, the protagonists are not all women. So
Hmm.
it's a book which talks about mental health in across genders.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not that it's talking about mental health in a particular gender, which
Hmm.
is often a kind of misconception
Hmm.
that one might have by reading the cover. So that's one thing. No, I think more or less you've covered.
And also it's interesting to see the way, different cultures, because we have different languages, the way
Yes.
in
Yeah,
which different cultures also are, reacting to mental health.
And
yeah, and
I
there is like both similarity as well as
as
Dissimilarity.
hmm.
difference. So
Hmm.
you can also find kind of certain common tropes
Hmm.
across cultures and languages.
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, that's yet another reason to sort of
And
go through the
just
book.
one thing, the oldest story, the earliest story
Ah,
in the volume is, I need to mention that because this is a story written in 1932.
Wow.
Right. So, and it's a Marathi story, and we would not have been able to get the story had it not been for the granddaughter of the author
Hmm.
who translated the story for us. And the most recent story is one that was published in 2023.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Wow. So
this
you
time
really
span is also
yeah,
straddled.
something,
entire
yes.
span.
Yes, this is also something that's interesting because the Marathi story presents a very empathetic and a stereotypical
Hmm. Hmm.
picture as well.
Very, very quickly, I just wanted to end by saying that, and I'd sort of mentioned this to Dr. Nishi quite categorically. Beautiful book cover design as well. It really sort of pops, and unfortunately we are in firmly in an era where you have to jump out of the shelf at the store, so it really does catch the eye. Very, very grateful for your time, for the work that you're doing. All the very best, and it's been a pleasure talking.
Thank you. Thank you
You
so much for this
really
conversation.
enjoyed about this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.